We are starting off with our first speaker, who loves rural living, modular synths and optical flares, but he loathes blue screens, the After Effects goat noise and bad coffee. Fun fact, he can do the worm. Let's hope that comes out at the after party. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Jack PRENC.
Oh, cut that a bit early, my bad. Thanks, James, for having me speak at Node. It's an honour to be speaking in front of all you weapons. Not going to lie, imposter syndrome is bloody high right now. But yeah, I'm Jack, and I'm one of the directors at Kojo. I also run an automated motion design business called Datamate, and in my spare time, I'm an artist and motion designer as well. So I live in Woorara East, which is about 3 hours out of Melbourne, and I live on an acreage in the hills with my wife, son, 5 horses and 4 chickens, and yeah, this is a little bit of what I cook up at the farm.
The atomic bombs of killing lies in its stark and terrifying reminder of humanity's boundless capacity for creation and
So yeah, that's what I've been up to over the past few years. Thanks, everyone. Yeah, so that's what I've been up to over the past few years. And today I'm going to run you all through the niche of motion design I work in, which is predominantly sport and live experiences. But first up, my journey in this industry started about 12 years ago, where I started freelancing straight out of uni. I managed to get casual work at a studio called White House Entertainment. And I helped their EP and kind of my first industry mentor, Brett Hardy, create sizzle reels for films and TV series that he would then go try and sell at MIPCOM in France, and did a bit of work as a runner between sets and stuff, and ended up working as an editor on a TV series called Garage Dreams. The work wasn't always full-time and it was slim at times, so I went to Upwork to try to make it big as a freelancer, which was a bad idea. I would bid and compete on like the worst jobs against people overseas charging like $5 an hour. But managed to make ends meet until I started progressing with my editing and motion skills and managed to get work at Channel 9 and another great studio in Melbourne called Film Time. And yeah, these places kind of brought me deeper into motion design and slowly away from the editing world. I think it was about 2015 or so, I, like many others, saw Raoul Marx's semi-permanent titles. This film literally inspired me to pull out my credit card and max it out on a bunch of GPUs and Octane. Yeah, look, it was a pretty defining point in my career because it kind of exposed me to the possibilities of what one person with the right tools, skill set and creative vision can achieve, and have been doing 3D pretty much solidly to this day. So throughout my years, I started making friends with a bunch of freelancers in the industry, and we'd all share work and client connections, and this kind of led me down the path of motion for sport. And around about this time, I think in 2017 or so, I started a business with a friend called Datamate and ventured into the world of business and building a service as a subscription product. So what is Datamate? Well, I'll give you all the quick elevator pitch in case there's any venture capitalists. I don't see any suits in the crowd, but we'll give it a go. Datamate is a cloud-based platform that gives sport leagues, clubs and brands the power to create videos in seconds with live data or user-driven data. So in short, it's essentially an automated motion graphics generator. And yeah, as I mentioned, it started out with a friend as an experiment. And we were working in broadcast and we're constantly making similar graphics in a news environment, which like spurred the question, can we automate some of these smaller tasks? And that question kind of sent us into 7 years of being in business together and went way outside the realm of motion design. We were creating a client-facing product that involved developers, scripting, testing and debugging and all that jazz. And then once we kind of had our minimum viable product, we then had to find places where it would be useful and then build business cases to try and sell that into markets. And we ended up focusing the product for sport, social media graphics specifically, as we noticed there was a lack of animated content for short turnaround graphics, such as score updates and injury updates, and kind of helping them make content on the fly in those pressure situations, like as the match is unfolding. So we basically built out different tiers of packages that we could go out to the market and try and sell it. And our pitch was really to provide the businesses with the ability to have a motion designer at their fingertips 24/7. And how it kind of works on the front end for the client is they can basically log into the platform, select a bunch of a video, then they'll be presented with a form. From that form, they could input stats, names, images, or video, and then select their aspect ratios that they might need. From there, they'll hit submit and receive their video in about 30 seconds. So here's an example of some of the stuff we did for Fremantle Football Club. And you can see they've got graphics for the pre-game, such as team lists, next match, and then those pivotal moments during the game where they want to do score updates or injury updates as the game's unfolding. And then afterwards, you've got player of the match, ladder positions, quotes, all those kind of things. So it's kind of catered for the week by week of sport. We've also been doing work with Nine's Wide World of Sport on a variety of their shows. So they kind of broadcast tons and tons of hours of content each year. And this tool allows the producers and journalists to be the drivers of content they might need on the fly in short turnarounds across their shows, and provides them with graphics when they may not have a designer or viz artist available, as an example. So how it works on the back end is quite interesting. Basically, that user submits a form and then that gets turned into JSON data that gets sent into an After Effects instance in the cloud. We're using Templator to basically grab that data, change all the data in the selected project, render it out, and then shoot it off to the client all in about 30 seconds. I wanted to show this to you all quickly because it's probably a niche of motion design that people don't often see. We always think of the work as a service opposed to a product, I guess. So while I was building Datamate, it had me looking at how do studios and agencies operate, win work and scale, and all those kind of business things we try not to spend too much time thinking about as motion designers. And at the same time, I felt I was missing something as a freelancer, which was being part of a team of friends. As a freelancer, you always fly into a studio, be that hired gun, and then parachute out of there. So yeah, I was really looking for that team camaraderie, which led me from going from freelance to full-time at Kojo. So today I'm a motion design director at Kojo, which is a sport experiences and film agency, and I work with these lovely individuals in the creative arm of the business. Many of them are here today, so reach out and say hello if you see them sinking tins at the afters. They don't bite. But yeah, I manage the team in partnership with Val, our senior motion designer. I kind of focus on the work coming into the studio and new business and whatnot, and Val focuses on working with the team to get the work done and out the door onto the screens. And yeah, there's kind of three main areas we cater to in the motion team, which brings in some really fun and unique work. One of my personal favourites is the branding and graphic packages for sport teams and leagues in the stadium environment. You'll hear me refer to this as sports presentation or fan experience throughout this talk. And then we've also done graphics packages for TV networks such as Wide World of Sports' NRL shows. We also do a bit of installation experiential work, so think large screens, big LED walls, projection mapping, all that fun stuff. And then within that, there's corporate events such as award shows and car launches as well. We've also been diving into titles for film through our studios department, and our latest work was for Ultraman Rising on Netflix. And this was a sweet project where the design team got to work on the branding and typography of the show for the marketing, collateral, and everything like that, which then fed into the motion team doing the main titles and main on ends. We've also been doing a bunch of innovative in-stadium mixed reality projects around the country, and these are basically augmented reality experiences played out live using Unreal Engine in the stadium's environment with a bunch of interesting tech. We generally approach these as like a 1-minute narrative with 2D or 3D experiences using that stadium's environment so things can happen interactively in it. And yeah, they're really cool projects as you're utilising everything the stadium has to offer, which is the AR on the big screens, LED ribbons, lights, sound, and in some cases even pyro if the budget permits. At the bottom here, at the left of the screen, you can see there's a camera moving. That's actually moving with a Stipe robotic camera head system with a pre-recorded camera move. We actually dial in the production room on site. Live data from that robotic head is being fed into Unreal. Then Unreal is basically tracking the AR graphics onto the camera feed and out onto the stadium screens. And in some projects and cases, that'll go to the TV at home as well. So yeah, these are pretty fun, big projects that we get to do. Leading on from that, we also do a ton of stadium light shows for sport matches around the country. And yeah, these are basically full stadium takeovers similar to that AR, but it's more centered around what's happening interactively around that stadium. And yeah, they kind of use the big screen with the LEDs and the lights and sound leading that one. So you might be wondering, how do you actually make a project like this? Well, what we do is we start with a template, what we call a 360 template. And you start by making a 30,000 by 1,000 composition in After Effects. That's half res, by the way. Like the AFL and cricket stadiums are so wide that we essentially have to do it at the After Effects' max limitation being 30K, do it at half res, and then continually raster through to get the final result, which is pretty cooked. But what we'll do is we'll make what we call a master composition, where we're basically, for you 3D people, UV unwrapping that stadium in After Effects, and that's kind of the canvas we'll work to. So once you've built your kind of master composition, you can see there, we'll then map that template into the export tiles that will get put out onto the stadium. So on the left there, you can see that's all the exports that will go out. And then on the right, you've got that master composition feeding into all those kind of mapped exports. So once you've got your master template, we'll then build what we call as a design composition, which is generally a division of that full width of the stadium, say arbitrary number 6K by 90 instead of 30K. And this is where we'll grab this and tile it around that template, making our lives much more simple to kind of work with. And this is where we'll do most of the animation for those projects. But sometimes we want to do some crazy stuff with the stadium, so we'll do what we call 360 effects or stadium-wide effects. And this is where we basically use that entire master composition to, say, shoot light from behind the goal all the way around the stadium or have things up and go down different levels. Yeah, this is pretty fun stuff to do, but playback's pretty bad. So one of the things we do with this kind of stuff is use proxies within After Effects. So once we've finished animating some 30K, size render, we'll basically cache that out and then feed it back in as an MOV using After Effects as proxies. But with this kind of stuff, you could imagine that the renders are pretty bad. So, if we're doing a 3-minute light show or more, you could be rendering for 3+ days. So how do you solve something like this? Well, what we do is we call John from Smush Workstations. We get him to build you a bunch of PCs. I love calling John. It always feels like an arms deal. Does anyone get that when they give him a call? Yeah. Shout out to John there. He's been super helpful. And don't worry, I didn't forget, there's your logo, 20% bigger, like they asked. I probably should have asked for the vector though. That's pretty, ugh. Sorry, man. Don't discount me. Anyway, many hands make light work. So what we do is we basically split the renders across machines. Make sure you got your mirrored same versions of After Effects, same plugins, all that jazz. So what we're going to do today is kind of go down the rabbit hole for motion in sports stadiums. It's a space I love working in. You get to create really big, impactful moments for fans, but there's kind of a dark side to this industry, which is tons and tons of deliverables, which I'll run you all through. But first up, here's Kojo's latest sport reel to kind of give you an idea of the work we do in this space. You would have seen a bunch of different stadiums in that reel. We actually operate out of the production rooms at a lot of these stadiums, which feed in a lot of work to the motion team from clubs, leagues and brands. And I generally split that work into 4 parts. The first one being fan experience. This is like your league and club branding, messaging, big moments like team entries or tournament hypes and goal stings and kind of the stuff that really ignites stadiums for fans. Then you've also got stuff like activations. For example, this is KFC's Catch the Colonel, where they basically pull someone from the audience to race the Colonel around the LEDs. I think if they beat the Colonel, they win the Bay a bunch of chicken or something like that. So there's like a lot of activations and things that'll happen that could include motion, digital activations, print, and even video content as well. And then you've also got live graphics with ROS Expression, and this is basically real-time motion graphics in the stadium environment using live data feeds, and this can include your scores, your comparisons, wipes, fan cams, a whole bunch of different things that can do as well. And then finally, you've got commercial content. If you've ever been to a stadium or a match before, you will notice there are commercials absolutely everywhere, so it's a huge part of the industry as well. And in these environments, you've generally got what's called graphic engines. In broadcast, it's usually VizRT, which some of you might be familiar with, but in stadiums, I've usually seen it being ROS Expression, in some cases Daktronics. And look, these are basically entire broadcast infrastructure to allow you to be able to see what you see on the screen. So, that's on your TVs at home and at the stadium, and they do a whole bunch of different things, but in terms of the motion graphics side, they're really dealing with the real-time stats and a whole bunch of different things like that. And the beauty of it is it updates content on the fly without the need of being able to, having to pre-render it. And yeah, if you're a tech fan, you should check it out because there's a huge shortage of these, of designers and developers in these tools probably across the world. And it can literally send you around the world as well. So what I want to do is take you through some project snapshots to kind of give you an idea of the content that we make, but also to showcase the amount of deliverables we've got to work to. So the first one is Cricket Australia, which is a client we've had for quite a few years, and we create and deliver content for T20, Test, ODI and BBL across both the men's and women's league. And yeah, you can see there we created over 7,000 files across all the different stadiums around the country last year, and probably on track to do even more with the women's Ashes this year. So it's quite a lot of output we've got to deal with. We've also done most of the World Cups that have come to town in the past 5 years, and the Cricket World Cup in 2022 was by far our biggest with over 10,000 files. And with this, we're creating country-themed assets. So if you've got a wicket, you've got 16 team versions of that wicket across all the different stadiums they play at. And the wild number there, as you can see, we've got 5,000 files for player profiles, which are basically animated player names around the stadium. And look, I know what you're thinking. Those numbers are ridiculous. It can't be right. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit you with some motion math to kind of give you an idea of how quickly it stockpiles. So you've got 16 teams for the Cricket World Cup, 16 players per team across 8 stadiums. It's generally about 22 files in total. If I do the quick maths on that, that's 5,632 files. So as you can see, it compounds really quickly, but yeah, more on this later because we're going to dive into how we actually get this stuff done. Another one of my favorites would be Gather Round, which is, it's an awesome one where we kind of take fan experience to a whole new level with multiple light shows, those mixed reality takeovers I showed you before. And again, a lot of the content is Gather Round branded with team colours and logos injected into it. So you've got 18 variations of a goal sting, 9 team versus teams, 9 countdowns, the list kind of goes on. And then finally, there's tons of different teams across all the different sport codes, and each of them have their own branding and kind of, tone of their branding that they want to convey in their sports presentation. I personally find this amazing because you've always got different stuff to work on as a creative. So in terms of the canvases we work to, you've usually got the big screen, which is that big screen you can see in the centre there, and then you've got your LED ribbon. Some stadiums will just have the field, others will have multiple levels like you see here at Adelaide Oval. And in terms of the big screen, or sometimes they're referred to as vision screens, they generally start at like 1920 by 1080, but then can go all the way to Accor Stadium, which is 9,184 pixels by 756 pixels. So you've got lots of different variations in size you've got to work and deal to there. And then with your tiled, with LEDs, you've basically got 2 approaches. The first one here is the tiled version, where you're basically building to a smaller size, and then Expression will populate that around the stadium, which makes your life so much easier. What you can see here is basically all the deliverables for each stadium for one asset across the cricket season. So you would see 7 other teams of this just for BBL. So again, a lot of files. So yeah, and then like I mentioned earlier, you've also got your 360 LED option where you're building and exporting to that full width of the canvas. So you can see there's a lot of kind of cool, impactful moments we can create for fans, but there's ultimately a lot of deliverables we've got to adhere to. So one of the things we've got to do in this line of work is find the balance of where you put your time. As creators, we want to spend all our time being creative and less time stuck in the weeds churning out content. So the way that we get around that essentially is with operational IP. That's workflows embedded into each team member. It's the templates and tools we use. The way we work across different teams, both internally and externally, say with freelancers or external vendors, stadiums that we've got to upload to and whatnot. And it's how we approach the work from a creative and production side. So from the motion production side, we generally split the way we think into two parts. We've got the creative phase where all the magic happens. And then we've got the rollout phase where we basically take those assets made in the creative phase and then roll them out for all the different deliverables, which, as you've seen, can be quite a lot. So in the creative phase, it generally starts with creative direction. We'll work out the game day narrative and basically lay out the groundwork for the entire fan experience in the case of league content. Then we go into art direction where we unpack that brand and explore how we can bring that brand and the tone of the brand to life in Stadium. Then we'll go into initial look development, boards, motion tests, all that fun kind of stuff. And once we've got the client buy-in, we'll move into the asset whip phase where we're basically building an animated whip of one asset. And if it's got, say, 8 different team variations across 10 different teams, we'll build it once and get that approved before moving into the rollout phase. In the rollout phase, we generally start with rigging and automation of the approved assets, and we then go into rollout and render out all the different deliverables that we've got to provide. And from there, once they're rendered, it goes to a quality assurance team that basically review all the content. And if they're happy with it, it'll go to the Stadium ingesting platforms. If it's not, we're screwed, and it's got to go back to the start of this, and we're going to go through this chain once again. So with that in mind, let's look at how we make some of this stuff, yeah? And look, I know what you're thinking. Sport guy, right? I bet she's just going to show us some fucking lens flares.
Goddamn right.
Hey, what's up? Andrew Kramer here with VideoCopilot.net.
Anyone? There's one sport guy at the front here. Nice one, nice. All right, enough of the MoGraph dad jokes. Let's look at how we actually make this stuff. The first asset I want to show is the women's BBL team win. It's a pretty simple asset. It's not going to win you any Emmys or anything, but it's pretty cool in the way that we've built it. So this here is the whip that was built in the creative phase of the production. And here's all the deliverables we had to create for that asset in the rollout phase. So yeah, you've got 8 different teams and a whole bunch of different variations for a field LED for that. And the way that's set up is all I need to do is duplicate the export composition and rename it to have the selected team. And it basically updates everything in that entire composition with the team's data. And the data that's changing is basically 3 3D renders, team colors, and team names. And what we're doing here is we're essentially using the team name in the export composition as the data of the driver of the data change all the way from the export to the farthest pre-comp you can see on the right there. And we're doing this with some simple expressions and essential graphics feeding that data through. And the way the data is changing is essentially with an if-else statement. So for example, we've got this pre-comp on the left. We're using an if-else statement to compare if the 3D render layer name is the same as the incoming text. If it is, the opacity is 100, else 0. So yeah, it's a simple switch at the end of the day. And we're doing this across everything in the project, and there's a bit of pick whipping and stuff as well. But you might be looking at me and going like, why would you do it this way? Well, it's now a modular asset. So, a lot of the times a new asset will come in or we need to update it for finals. For example, this champions asset, you've got to drop in a bit of confetti there for finals. This way I can kind of work in that design composition and it'll auto-populate to all the deliverables. And yeah, it allows everything to be quite modular and quick to rework. And in sports and broadcasts, you're generally doing multi-year deals and packages, and the clients will generally spend most of their money on the first build. So we build in a way where we can, add value and update content quickly, providing more cost efficiencies and more value to them while also making it efficient for us on our end as well. On the 3D side, everything was done with Houdini with Vellum, and we've got a simple dashboard that I built that allowed us to change, change different colors and logos between the different sims. And then I used the take systems to render all of that out, which there was 24 renders that we had to do for that. That's a good segue to the next tool I use a ton. I love Cinema 4D takes and tokens. I think it's just an amazing addition into After Effects that happened a while back. But yeah, it allows you to build an asset once and then rework it for multiple variations, and then automate the naming conventions of that, which is a huge time saver as well. So, for example, here's the BBL Sixers takeover asset. I was able to build it once, and then I created a dashboard that allowed us to essentially, change all the data needed. You can see that at the middle right there. Then I use the take systems to basically rework all of that for each team deliverable. And the beauty of this is, if I need to change anything, I can do that in that main take, and it'll feed through everything. Like, let's say finals comes back and I've got to drop some more confetti particle sims in there or something. So it's really nice to work that way. Setting up your dashboard is pretty simple. I generally start by creating a null and then add user data into the null's attribute manager. You can kind of see that I'm doing it at the bottom left there. And then in the middle, you can see I'm selecting the data I need. And Cinema 4D gives you tons of different data points that you can change. There's two methods for setting up your dashboard. I generally start by making an Espresso tag. You could probably do this with scene nodes these days, to be honest. I'm just still a boomer and stuck in Espresso. Probably should do some training on that. But yeah, on the left there, you can see I've pulled all the data I need to be able to edit and have mapped it to the dashboard. This is kind of the clean technical director approach. On the right there, you can see I'm actually brute forcing it with set driver, set driven across all the different data points, creating millions of nulls and millions of Espresso tags. At the bottom right here, you can see I'm actually hiding all of those nulls in a null, ultimately hiding my shame of a bad workflow from my teammates. So if you're going to do this kind of stuff, do it the TD way, I would say. But yeah, we'll do dashboards across everything. So, After Effects is really good with it. For example, here with the recent power surge we made, we were just able to set up a dashboard with essential graphics and pick whipping to change colors, logos, or whatever it might be. And then we've also done it a bit with Unreal Engine. For example, here's a commercial bumper for Wide World of Sports. They can call us up in short turnaround, say, hey, we've sold a moment. Here's the logo, the colors, and the messaging. We can say, sweet, we'll have it to you in a couple hours. Unreal's wicked with that, and Blueprints is really powerful. Then finally, Cinema 4D, Houdini, Blender, they've all got the ability to do so. So with the LEDs, we use Essential Graphics really heavy to rework compositions to different tile sizes. So on the bottom left there, you can see that's all the different versions we had to export for this season. And yeah, we're able to do it in one comp, and then we'll do all of the design and animation in what we call as a design tile, basically just a composition. That we'll then rig up the elements, be able to nudge and shift things around to make those different tile sizes and make them seamless. And yeah, this is a really good way of working because you've essentially got your master composition that can have everything in it. And if I wanted to change something or add confetti for finals again, it can feed all through those deliverables, which is awesome. So looping back to those player profiles that we talked about earlier, we've got a few different approaches we've got for these, and it really depends on what the project is or how many outputs there are. The first one we'll do is the kind of manual approach, and we generally set them up with that if-else workflow you saw before, where we've got the player name and number in the export name, which is changing all the data in all the compositions, and that's also switching out the images and video if you've got vision in there. If you're not a script lord or you don't want to deal with expressions and that, you could use something like TrueComp Duplicator to brute force it. It's a really good free tool on AE scripts. It'll allow you to build it once and then TrueComp Duplicate, change it all, and just work through them all one by one. But my favorite approach would be DataClay's Templater Pro. This tool allows you to control data in After Effects from a spreadsheet. So what you can see on the right here is the Per Scorch's player profile, and we've hooked up the data for the video, the name and the number, and we're just feeding that in from that spreadsheet on the left. And the beauty of it is, once you've set it up, I can just click through all the different rows in that spreadsheet, make sure it's all good, and then automate all of the rendering of it. It's a super powerful tool. So here's all the data for that Cricket World Cup that I talked about earlier. It allows you to build an asset once and automate tons and tons of variation. It speeds up the delivery stage dramatically for the kind of work we do, allowing us to spend more time on making cool looking shit and not dealing with that wall of pain. But then finally, I've been experimenting with NextRender, which is an open source and more of a developer-centric version of Templater. It uses JSON and deploys projects with the After Effects' command line interface. which is pretty fascinating. You can see that it's actually rendering a project on the left there. And yeah, look, it's extremely powerful. If you say wanted to render 100,000 videos across 100 clusters of After Effects, you could do that with something like this tool. So if you're a tech fiend, check it out. It's pretty crazy. I've been working with NextRender on Datamate for a minute now, and they can do some crazy stuff with it. So look, I think key takeaways in the stuff I've shown you just now is probably, we're bloody geniuses, you know. We've sped up our workflow dramatically, allowing us to make way more cool shit at a way faster pace. But speaking for myself here, I'm just pretty damn lazy. I'd prefer to do this much work and let the computer do this much work. And I don't know about all of you, but to me, as a creative, that looks really daunting to look at compared to the previous spreadsheet I showed you before. But yeah, I think these solutions we've got for production, they allow us to tip the scales to be able to spend more time being creative and less time stuck in the weeds churning out content, which I think is a huge win for us, our creative goals. And at the end of the day, I think it provides more value for clients from a creative quality and output perspective to be able to spend more time on it. So computers are great at processing, but they suck at being creative. So let the machines do the boring crap, so we can do the fun stuff, I think would probably be the key message in everything I've shown you just there. But in this line of work, you've got to make sure that you measure twice and cut once. So if you say with like player profiles, for example, you've got 500 files that have even the most minor issues, and you've got to go back and rework that project and re-render it all, you're instantly losing profit, creating delays, and creating a lot of pressure in the teams around you. So you've got to make sure you plan your work and work to your plan. But not all projects can be measured. Sometimes things will drop in short notice, which is a huge thing in sport, and you're screwed and you just need to brute force it. I think having good processes and operational workflows and all of that can really help with these projects quite a lot. If you've got a workflow or a template or tool set you can use, it's going to apply to this in a short turnaround. Amazing. Then finally, I feel like the market's looking for more content than ever, generally at a cheaper price. So I hope that what I've kind of shown here, you know, sparks interest into everyone to think about, like, what's your process look like? How can you refine it? How can you be more organized? But how can you add value to your clients on projects? And it's a big one for me because I think not all of us are on the biggest projects out there with infinite budgets, but I do think we can do great work within our limitations and client constraints. So yeah, bit of food for thought there with some lumberjack imagery. That was probably a lot to take in. I've talked tons about deliverables and, you know, automation and rollout and renders and all that. I want to round this up with the stuff we love the most, which is the, you know, cool creative stuff. And for me, that's always personal projects. I think this industry is great with growth within personal projects. You know, if there's a new skill you want to explore, a new visual aesthetic you want to try out, you can do that really easy with your own time and tools. And I don't think any, you know, not many industries other than the creative industry has the ability to do that. You know, if I'm a civil engineer building bridges, I go, fuck, that looks like a good skyscraper. I'd love to make that. I'll probably go study for 5 years or something. But for me, if I want to try cell animation, I can probably just do it. And yeah, one of my favorite personal passion projects was the tour visuals I did for a band called Polaris. They're a metalcore band based out of Sydney. And they hit me up through my brother, who's their sound engineer and album producer. And yeah, they asked if I could help bring their show to life visually for their album tour in 2022. And we ended up making an hour of non-stop crazy alien visuals across 16 different songs. Here's a look at some of those different songs. That's all 16 stacked up. You can see there's a bit of a theme there. Well, my dad's a butcher and my mum's a tarot card reader. So inherently I'm a creature of the darkness, which you may notice within that. But it was really cool to kind of explore that visually within this project. And I think that's what I love about personal projects. You know, you can explore the abstract or themes that you may not do in your day job. Like for mine, it's sports, tons of lens flares and a lot of text that honestly just goes. So yeah, it's cool to do some different things. But honestly, an hour of content's a ton to make, especially for a dude with a full-time job and a child on the way. So, you know, I had to pull out a bunch of different techniques that allowed me to be able to create this stuff within a manageable time frame. And I think the call out here is you've got to, you know, I implore you all to have a think about, like, what are your secret techniques or the things you can call on when you've got to get the job done? You know, we always talk about the creative, but sometimes getting the work out there, you've got to have those things in your back pocket. So I'm going to wrap up with a show reel of this now, but a quick caution, if you don't like metal in the crowd, you're about to get thumped, so strap in. But any of the metalheads in here, enjoy. Here we go.
From what we said, from this
it to the bone! No chance to buy back the life that we showed! Freedom versus your home! Each will suffer the same! Our own rapture, our own judgment! To know what we will burn if we turn away.
Was it far too late to save me? I'm just a shell of the man I used to be.
Wait, that was loud. Yeah, thanks for listening, everyone. I hope you learnt, got to see a side of motion you may not have seen before. If you've got any questions, I'll be sinking tins at the afters. And any of the sport people in the crowd, let's trauma bond over some 360 leads. Cheers. Thank you.
Yours, Jack?